What is up, fam? Thank you so much for tuning in to So Real Sports Talk TV. You know it's Wednesday night, which means I got baby bro Rohan Chakravarti from 49ers Web Zone with me. Rohan, we missed last week because you was out doing family stuff, so we got you this week. How's everything going, man? It feels like I haven't talked to you in a while, even though I talk to you like every day.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, right? Because it just feels like with the amount of news that we've been recently getting, 1 week has felt like so long. But like,
Right.
yeah, it's definitely been a good time. Glad to be back on it. And yeah, definitely glad to talk it up with you.
I love it. And we got Karthik from CarCast. Make sure to go subscribe to Little Bro. I'm actually going to be on with him, Rohan, on Saturday. So excited to go. It'll be my first time on CarCast. So he says what's up to both of us. Yeah, man. So let's just jump into it. Obviously, when we first started talking in the morning, there was a situation with Grant Cohn and Javon Kinlaw that stemmed from, yesterday actually. And, thankfully it's all been resolved. We don't really need to talk about it too in depth because, it's been, talked about all through Twitter, a lot of spaces. And I think, everything has been resolved, I guess. But it did, it did bring up, I guess, this ongoing debate that ever since, journalism has turned more into, opinions, right? You got guys like, Skip Bayless, who I think is the OG, and then you got guys like Colin Cowherd, Jim Rome, Ariel Helwani. These guys are guys that went from, sports journalism when it was just about talking numbers and schemes and interviewing guys and just kind of getting their takes and whatnot to actually having opinions about things and sensationalizing things and being more sports entertainment.
Mhm.
That's kind of where what we've dealt with. And I was talking to you a little bit before we started. I remember vividly Jalen Rose and Skip Bayless having a interview on one of those shows that they were doing, and just like wondering, like, am I watching this? Because it came out of nowhere as far as the debate. And basically it was the crux of what we saw from Javon Kinlaw and Grant Cohn today is, is there a line that could be crossed in, I guess, covering athletes when it comes to critiques? And, you're very young in the game. Me too. I'm very young in the game of doing this, Rohan. But what do you think about that? Do you think there's a line to be crossed? And, overall, if you want to touch on, the situation, I'll have you give you the floor to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a very interesting situation, right? And obviously, we're young in the content creator game. You've been in it for a while. This is my second year going into covering the 49ers Web Zone. And something, I mean, I always try and tread lightly, right? Because when it comes to journalism, I think there are two things that you have to do. Not only do you have to give your objective opinion on the team, meaning that you can't be fully positive or you can't be fully negative. You got to just call it how you see it, but you've also got to make sure you don't take it personal, because that's the main line that I try not to cross. I make sure that I don't get into the personal aspect of a player. I won't ever call out a player for something personal. I try and keep it to strictly football. And if you're critical of someone's play, that's fine, right? Um, I'm not saying that it's valuable to dehumanize things. I like that's the main reason why earlier this offseason I started doing player interviews with NFL draft prospects. I had a PSA in a way before every interview, and the point was that there's so much talk about players and how like it's all talk about their play, right? Not necessarily about the person. That's why I saw a lot to try and see how people are behind the spotlight, right? See how people are, what their true personality is. And that's why I did player interviews, because I thought that was important. But when we talk about crossing a line, I think it's really when you get when it makes it when you kind of step away from football. And for Grant, right? Grant obviously is a very interesting character on this football talk. I do respect him. and I do respect his journalism. I think he has a certain way in the way he does things. I think that would I do it his way? Not necessarily. I think I have my own style and the way that I like to do my reporting. However, Grant, though, the one thing that I'll say that could be considered potentially crossing the line is just the name calling in a way, right? Like he yesterday, what did he say? He talked about Javon Kinlaw, and he was talking about the 80-year-old knees and things like that, right? Are those necessarily football related? No. Could he say that he could phrase it better, right? That's the one thing. However, I think if you keep it strictly to football, I think that's okay. And I think a majority of journalists have done that. At least majority of the credible journalists have done that for the most part.
Yeah, and Bomber T is on agrees with you. I don't blame Kinlaw for getting mad. If someone said I had 80-year-old knees, and I'm 23, I could confront the guy as well. LOL. Yeah, I mean, look, for full disclosure, Grant is somebody who, if there wasn't Grant, I probably wouldn't be in this space right now. He was definitely somebody that put me on, gave me a platform, brought me on his show, and introduced me to the community. And I would have never met you, would have met Jesse, Jack, all the guys that I work with regularly. So I have a lot of respect for Grant as well. Now, I obviously also look at it from an entertainment perspective, because the reality is there's a lot of people in this 49ers media content creator space. So nobody really monetizing it the way that Grant does. And so you have to have a lot of respect for the way that he does what he does. Now, with that being said, does he sensationalize things? Does he say things that I wouldn't feel comfortable saying? Absolutely. But to his credit, he also isn't shy from backing down off of those statements. He carried himself, I thought, fairly well with the whole Javon Kinlaw situation. And to be honest, it takes he has a very thick skin. It also takes a certain type of person to be okay with being hated, right? And one of the things that I thought was most surprising from it, Rohan, is just all of the 49er teammates and players, not only on the team this year, but, Jaquiski Tartt, who isn't even on the team right now, just kind of team up in it. And it looks like, Grant has probably burnt a lot of bridges as far as ever being able to have some kind of trust with the players on the team. And, that's a very brave stance to take, like to follow a team and then kind of alienate most of the players on that team is going to be interesting. It's going to be epic to see how that locker room is going to be, because now that these journalists are going to be able to go back into the locker room and do interviews there, I wonder how he's going to be treated by the team overall. But I mean, obviously players have to hear all of this stuff, and they have a right to get offended. I think there's this, a lot of people are there's some fans that are stating, you're making millions of dollars, like why are you being so sensitive about it? And I don't think that these players are necessarily quote unquote sensitive. I think that I think Jaquiski Tartt said it the best. Sometimes narratives are created, and one thing that we have to also, Grant has a very powerful voice with at least 49er fans, and he could create a narrative, and if players don't like that narrative, they don't necessarily have the same type of platform to be able to just come out. Like if we normalize the fact that anytime a player goes at a journalist for their criticism, all of a sudden the player looks soft. Like that kind of, to me, is a dichotomy that I don't know if we want to live in that world, because it's the same type of thing you see with Kevin Durant, right? Kevin Durant is somebody who is kind of prickly with the media. He's willing to lash out on his platforms, his social media, all that kind of stuff. And then the journalists' take on Kevin Durant is, oh, he's soft, oh, he's sensitive, all this kind of stuff. Where I'm just like, well, that's not fair. Like, it's not fair if you can say whatever you want and he can't say those things back or defend himself. And I got to give credit to Grant, because he allowed Javon Kinlaw to say whatever he wanted to say. And, thanks to John Lynch, they, hashed it out, kumbaya, and everybody's cool again. But I think it's okay for Grant to say what he says, as long as it's okay for the athlete to say whatever they want to say. And then, everybody could just hash it out.
Yeah, I agree. And like, obviously, this could have been handled better on both sides. I thought, like, I know we were talking to Grant earlier today. I spoke with him earlier in space today, and he understood. He wished in a way that not that he would take it back, just because he had to put the video out there just to make sure there's evidence in a way. But Grant kind of said like he wished he handled it a little differently, either cutting it off earlier or something like that to make sure it didn't get to that point where it was. And to me, like I think that obviously you want to handle this in private, just like it got handled today. Grant was saying that he was talking to the PR director to set up something that happened today, yesterday itself, trying to set it up before Kinlaw came on the live. And you kind of want it to be hashed out in private, right? Because you're right. I don't think players should just like I I hate using this phrase just because um, it's so disrespectful. But I definitely don't think players should just shut up and dribble, right? I don't
Right.
think that that's fair to the players at all. Like just because they're getting paid millions doesn't mean that they don't have a right to their own opinions. They don't have a right to share their voice, express their voice. However, obviously, when you're not only representing yourself but the entire organization, it's important that you are careful with what you say and most likely try and say it in a private light, right? And so I think both sides could handle it better, but it was definitely like something we haven't necessarily seen in a while, and also a learning lesson for a good amount of people.
Yeah, and I mean, it showed me a few things. One, it seems like a lot of 49ers players actually want Grant's YouTube channel, or at least sees clips and things like that, which is, props to Grant for being able to do that. And it also, it also showed me that a lot of the 49ers players do not like Grant. So it was pretty interesting to see that aspect of it. I'm glad that cooler heads were able to prevail. I think that Grant is great. And I admire what he's been able to do. I think most of us would love to have, his position with, the way his channel does and, the type
Mm-hmm.
of, impact he's been able to have with just his opinions and things of that nature. But, I'm like you, Rohan, I would do it a different way. I'm not shy of critiquing players, but, I definitely don't want to sensationalize it. And, I also don't want to stop seeing them as humans and things of that nature. And maybe a part of that is why guys like Grant are bigger, because I think it takes a lot of confidence to be what Grant is, and
Right.
be cool with being the bad guy. And so props to Grant, props to Javon. I think the team did a good job rallying behind Javon Kinlaw. It's nice to see that aspect. And I like I said, Eric Armstead and Grant got into it over the last few years. The last few years, Eric Armstead had really great seasons for the 49ers. So the fact that Javon Kinlaw is now, in a little beef with Grant, bet on it, man.
He's in
Javon
ahead.
Kinlaw is having a
He's in
breakout
ahead.
season this year. So I think that that's a good sign for the 49ers, because if Javon Kinlaw is the player that we expect him to be, everything that he's saying that he's going to be this season, that's going to be a very, very dominant defensive line. So we could get off of that.
Yeah.
We don't like talking about too much drama, Rohan. We're here to talk football. So there was also some football stuff that happened this week with the 49ers. Obviously, day one of OTAs was a few
49ers
days
play
ago.
football? Oh, I didn't even know that.
Right. So OTAs day one happened a few days ago. We obviously we saw some highlights from there, talk about it. But what was real interesting is we got to see a lot of interviews, an hour's worth of interviews from multiple different players, and obviously Coach Shanahan as well. I know you've done a few breakdowns on it, Rohan. So just without, boring yourself with all your takes, but what were some of your biggest takeaways, man? What stood out now that you've been able to digest it a few days later?
Right. So I mean, there were a couple of things, right? And we can talk about the play, we can talk about the interviews, but overall, it's the first day. That's kind of what I took out of it. It's the first day. It's not you can't really even when you want to take positive or negative details out of it. I think it's got to be important, right? And that's to know that's the first day. But prefacing with that, Trey Lance dazzled, 16 of 18. albeit 12 of those passes were to tight ends and running backs, mainly checkdowns. But I thought that was an important stat to note. Why? First of all, the checkdowns, right? A lot of people try and trash on checkdowns. I actually don't mind the checkdowns, especially even if it's on 7-7s, because that means you're going through your entire progression. Now, are you going through it quick enough? That's the one thing you can't essentially note via a 7-on-7 when there's no contact or no defensive line rushing at you. But if you're going through your progressions, I think that was important. And also, I like that the running backs and the tight ends are getting featured in the passing game, right? That was something that a lot of 49er fans complained about last year, especially with the tight ends. George Kittle didn't get 1,000 yards last year, stuck in the 900s. And that was like due to a couple of monster games, not a steady pace over the course of the season. And then the running backs really haven't been receiving backs at all in the Shanahan offense, something Anthony Lynn has been known for. So, yeah, that's something that I was also interested in, that running backs were getting the passes. In fact, JaMychal Hasty and Jeff Wilson caught the first 2 passes of the day. I thought that was pretty nice. So while there isn't much to take away from Lance's day or like the passing game overall after just one practice in a non-contact capacity, I did like that one aspect of the game. From the interview specifically, right? Shanahan, I thought it was the first time, to be honest. I could be wrong, but I thought it was the first time where he verbatim said that he expected Garoppolo to be traded. You know, the 49ers have done this song and dance in a way about Garoppolo. Oh, we wanted him traded. The injury stopped it, and now we don't know. We're prepared for all scenarios. But Shanahan just said, screw all the BS. I'm just saying it straight up. I expect Garoppolo to be traded. Obviously, he says if that doesn't happen, we'll see. But he does expect Garoppolo to be traded. And I mean, that's like the thing everyone's been waiting for. It was kind of like a Trey Lance day in a way. It was all the focus was towards Trey Lance, be it via Greasy's interview today, be it with how they were working with Trey Lance yesterday and all the words about Trey Lance yesterday, or even Trey Lance himself. And that's where I'll end my statement with Trey Lance's own interview. I thought he carried himself with poise. I thought he showed true maturity from a 21, 22-year-old. And I mean, I know we were talking about the Kinlaw thing, and that's kind of probably why some of it got blown out of proportion, because Trey Lance held himself to such a high regard yesterday. But just speaking on Trey Lance itself, I thought the maturity, the leadership was great to see from him, especially when asked the question about Grant, about if he was if he cared about outside noise.
Yeah. I actually took a lot from the interviews, Rohan. Just to start where you left off, with Shanahan. One, Shanahan hates the media. Like, it's clear that he has a disdain for the media. He's just up there, kind of like our man Marshawn Lynch. I'm just here not to get fined type of attitude. He obviously answers the question, but it's very very monotone, not really breaking too many smiles, just to the point and all that kind of stuff. But definitely a good sign, I guess, for people who are looking for some more definitive news about the quarterback position. Obviously, like you mentioned, it does look like Trey Lance is going to be the starter. And for most of us that were reading between the lines from his, his statements, even during the draft or coaches, I forget if it's like the coaches meetings or the draft. Anyways, we all knew it was then when he was basically saying it then. Now it's just like more defined, and that's the closest you're going to get to him naming a starter, I believe, till, week 1 or whatever. But we're going to talk about that a little bit more in depth as well. It was, some things he brought up. There's a few injuries there that I didn't know that were there, especially,
right.
Azeez Al-Shaair and, Flanagan Foles. So it makes sense why a guy like Greenlaw stayed, because that was somebody who we thought might be traded, during the draft, because we thought they have just an abundance of linebackers there. But seems like maybe not everybody's going to be healthy, maybe even before the season. So it's good that Warner and Greenlaw are still back there. I also thought, his comments just overall about, why he made certain decisions with the team were pretty interesting as well. But there was 2 other things that really stood out to me. Obviously we got to see interviews from Kittle, from Trey. We're going to talk about more. I'm going to give more about my Trey when it comes to us talking in the later topic. Yeah. But Trey, Kittle, Ayuk, and Ward, I think those are the four, right? Player interviews that we got to see. The biggest thing to me that was kind of like an overall theme, and it started with Shanahan saying, we have a pretty good idea what Alex Mack is going to do. I think you guys know as well. And then I didn't really know because I'm like, I don't know as well. Kyle, can you give us a little bit more? But then player after player after player was speaking as if he is coming back.
Yeah.
Right? There was no hesitation about that. So for me, that was a big like green flag for me. I was like, well, it looks like everybody's under the assumption that, or knows, not even under the assumption, just knows Alex Mack's coming back. So I think that makes a lot of sense about why we saw the type of offseason that we saw, like why they didn't go too hard in maybe drafting a center right away or, going after somebody in free agency. I think Alex Mack is coming back, and, obviously we can't be 100% sure, but it seemed like that way from the interview process. Before I go on, is that kind of the sense that you got too, Ron?
Yeah, I think that's the case. And I mean, it's interesting because we have two groups on 49ers Twitter in a way. We have the group that's confident from words that Alex Mack is coming back. And then we have the group that's not confident that Alex Mack is coming back. To me, I've been of the group that Mack is coming back following the draft, just because they not only didn't draft a center, they haven't signed JC Treader. They haven't really been active in the center market. And I understand that they got two guys, two undrafted free agents in Jason Poe and Donovan West. Guess what? They were not the top guys on the depth chart yesterday. Both of them played on the third team. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but both of them started on the third team yesterday. It's not like they were on the first or even the second team on the offensive line. And there was opportunity there. But I'll talk about that in a minute. Really, what I meant to say is Kittle talked about how he's convincing Alex Mack to come back, how he was with Mack earlier this offseason. Like the aura just seems like it. Trey Lance even said, I miss Alex Mack, and when he was talking about his offensive line and how the guys that he kind of wants to get back to. I know he talked about Debo, he talked about Alex Mack as well. So like really, It does seem like Alex Mack in a way is coming back and they're prepared for it, which in a way it's definitely very helpful for the young guys.
Look, yeah, and I think one of the biggest question marks for 49er Twitter is what this offensive line is going to look like. People are bringing up continuity. People are bringing up, all this doom and gloom. And I've been somebody that's pretty consistent, Rohan, with this offensive line. If Alex Mack comes back, look, they're returning 4 out of 5 starters. 4 out of 5 of those starters are going to be either a first-round pick or a second-round pick. They got all pro level talent in obviously Trent, Alex Mack, Aaron Banks is probably going to be the left guard, who's a second round pick. Then they got, Mike McGlinchey, right tackle, who I know a lot of people are up and down on him, but, as far as the run game, that's a big upgrade over, who we've had, like Tom Compton. And then, Brunskill could be, the right guard who was there right guard who was there all last season as a starter. And, he has some competition there behind him that maybe, can outplay him and be a starter. Guys like Moore or Jalen Moore or, some of the rookies that they got. But overall, I think this offensive line is going to be fairly decent. They were top 10 last year. I think they finished anywhere between 7 and 9. Depending on who was grading the offensive lines. And I think they have the ability to even maybe take a step further now with, McGlinchey there and, another year of continuity with everybody. But the other thing that really stood out to me from the interviews was Brandon Ayuk, man. And you mentioned it. I think you mentioned it for a different reason that it was interesting to me. But what was interesting was it sounded like Brandon Ayuk was understanding, taking a little bit more of accountability of why the season early on last year went the way that it went, right? He talked about being more into now the leadership role, kind of the elder statesman, and being able to see from that perspective why certain decisions were made earlier in the season. And, I don't think you and I were working too much together back then, earlier last season, but I was a big like, why isn't Ayuk getting the ball? Like, why aren't they just force feeding Ayuk? He's such a great threat and whatever. And I guess Shanahan obviously knew what he was doing. And you saw second half of the season, Brandon Ayuk really stepped up and was a different player. And it looks like he understands everything now. I think he seems to be really happy with working with a guy like Trey Lance. I just
Yeah.
expect a big year out of this guy. I already did based off of just the talent and it being year 3 for him. But it looks like he's more mature. It looks like he has a better understanding of how to be in the NFL. And to me, if I'm defenses looking at how Ayuk at least mentally is, because it seems like that was more the issue last season versus the physical, obviously, that could be a scary combination for anybody that has to go up against him.
Oh yeah, I think that you definitely nailed it there because Ayuk, I don't know about you, but it just doesn't seem like Ayuk was talking as much like in past time, right? I didn't think that Ayuk was really um, a main guy to the media, right? It used to be Debo when the wide receiver group was talking. It used to be Debo. Ayuk didn't really see much media time, and it's super interesting to see him thrown in the first media session of this offseason program. Him, Trey Lance, kind of like the new faces, right? And I'm not saying Debo isn't there. That's not at all what I mean. I just mean in a way like that Ayuk. It seems like he's ready, right, in a way to take that next step. You expect receivers in the first, like that third year is really when you expect those receivers to take the next step. Ayuk is heading into that third year. And there was a very interesting question yesterday, yesterday, directed towards Kyle Shanahan during his monotone speech. He was asked how Shanahan said, or he was asked how, like, he gave Debo high praise last year in the offseason. Have you seen similar things with Brandon Ayuk? And he kind of said, or here's his quote. I think each year, guys, you have learned stuff. You learn stuff from it, and you learn how hard this league is. And guys usually go one or two ways each year. They realize, man, I have to put more work in and prepare for that long haul. Or, man, that was exhausting, and I'm going to avoid that as long as I can until I have to come back. And usually, the ones who get better and better are the ones who figure out what they have to do each season and in the offseason to prepare for that. And I think Brandon's done that each year. Debo's been awesome with that stuff each year, and that's why veterans usually understand how to make it in this league a little better. Essentially, he's just talking about the maturity of players as they get older, and I think it's a signal that Brandon Ayuk is ready for that guy, or sorry, not guy, ready for that next step.
Yeah, ready to beat that guy, right? Because I think they're going to be everybody's expecting a big year out of Brandon Ayuk. My guy, Swan Song, taking it,
Oh,
can't let go, has to be his little. So when I stepped to you, So Real Sports Talk TV, your body went cold, your voice went higher than my baby. Great line, obviously an ode to Javon Kinlaw and Grant. We passed that, my dude. That's all squashed. But love you, my guy, Swan Song. Thank you for jumping in. Yeah, I mean, overall, Rohan, just from the interviews, it just seems like this team is back to the fun loving spirit. I think everybody's pretty focused. I was very relieved, I guess. Not necessarily relieved, but I mean, I was just happy at the overall aura of the team. It's been a very quote unquote dramatic offseason, especially if you like us that's paying attention to 49er Twitter all the time. A lot of drama, a lot of negativity, a lot of just like people feeling like the moves weren't done right and all this kind of stuff. And look, at the end of the day, Trey Lance looks like he's going to be the starter. Looks like Jimmy won't be on the team. Looks like Alex Mack's coming back. Looks like Debo's going to come back and they're going to extend him. Looks like the team is the deepest that we've probably ever seen in the 49ers regime, under Kyle Shanahan and Lynch's regime. Definitely the best secondary that we've ever seen from Lynch and Shanahan. And when you look at it, you're just like, dang, this team, this offseason was actually really successful, for however it took for them to get from point A, to point Z. It looks phenomenal when it's all said and done. And I think that the OTAs day one of the interviews, just gave me that sense that everything's going to be all right.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. And I mean, it's crazy how you get that feel just from one day, but it just seems like it, right? And even before this Kinlaw news happened this past day, You even heard the good reports out of Kinlaw's camp, right? Even yesterday, Shanahan said that both Kinlaw and McGlinchey are ahead of schedule. And so that's another good piece of news because you expect them to be ready for training camp. And so they can take their next steps respectively in their careers. And so, yeah, I think this team is ready to roll, right? You have open competition and things like that. And one question I wanted to talk about you before we kind of transition in a way. At the slot cornerback position, I was writing about this, and this, or I guess we can transition in a way to
Yeah, I like it.
about
Here's
camp.
the last two sentences were a really good transition, so we'll get into it, right? Because
Yeah,
camp is, very soon going to be upon us. Do you know the exact date that mandatory camp starts?
yeah. June 13th to 15th is mandatory mini camp, and then
Okay,
training camp
so
itself is in late July.
got you. So in just a few weeks here, right? We're at the end of May. So just within, 2 or 3 weeks, we're gonna have the whole team there, mandatory mini camp. So I put both the question, most exciting battle in camp. And you're talking about the slot corner. Is that it for you?
Yeah, so it's one of them, right? And the reason is I was very interested that Darquise Denard started in the slot yesterday. You saw the safety position, Talano, Hufunga got the start, and then you saw the slot corner position. To me, though, in a way, it was somewhat expected. More Hufunga than Denard, but what this indicates is that of the group from last year, the 49ers are more comfortable with Denard, and they're more comfortable with Hufunga. What I mean by that is Week 18 last year. Who got the start or not the start, but who played meaningful snaps in the slot? It was Denard. It wasn't Diamond Lenore, who was actually inactive that game. Denard played in 32% of the defensive snaps. So in the latest game down the line, when the slot cornerback position had a hole, it was Denard that the team went with, despite picking him up off the practice squad just 2 weeks earlier, from the New York Giants practice squad, that is, 2 weeks earlier, which kind of doesn't show much confidence towards Diambro Lenore. So I wasn't very surprised when he got the start in like yesterday's OTA period. Now, do I
Yeah.
expect Denard to be the starting? Or go ahead first.
No, I was just gonna say. I mean, Kyle Shanahan actually touched on that in his interview as well, right? He talked about, look, Denard was somebody who actually showed a lot to us last season, and now to have him through the whole off season and then into the year, like he didn't, like you said, he didn't give him the position necessarily, but he said he definitely has a chance. So obviously somebody to keep an eye on. But I didn't mean to cut you off, Ron.
No, that's fair. And I mean, he talked about it. Now, is it the best case scenario that a 30-year-old cornerback going into his age 31 season, who spent last year on the practice squad of several teams, not even an active roster, as is your starting cornerback in 2022? No. But I do think that it was somewhat expected, given that he trusted Denard obviously more than Lenore. And when you're at the stage in this team, you don't give young players reps. You don't give young players first team reps. You give the best player or the most comfortable player out there. And do I think Denard is a slot cornerback starting week one? No. I do think that there are several other players that can compete, meaning Samuel Womack could compete for there. You could have Jason Verrett, when he's healthy, compete for there. You could have Dante Johnson even compete for there. Like, I think there are a number of players that can compete in the slot for the 49ers, even Tariq Castro-Fields, if they believe that that length and size can translate to corner. So, there are a number of players that can compete for there. Obviously, the 49ers haven't seen those guys, or those guys are injured, which is why you start the guy that you know. But I thought that was very interesting yesterday. And then the other position was safety. I'll let you touch on that.
Yeah, I mean, just to go off of what you said with the slot corner, because clearly that is a position where there isn't like a for sure starter, right? And you mentioned the other position with safety and slot corner, probably the two positions that are left on the defense as far as who the starter is going to be. And yeah, I mean, they did bring in a guy like Samuel Womack, who I think has a lot of potential to play there in the slot, depending on how they foresee him. It could be a place where even Mosley moves to the slot in certain packages where they could start Ward, Verrett, and Mosley there, as well. So it is going to be interesting. I think that is a battle that all eyes are going to be peeled on, because it's clearly a position that is open, and I think most guys in the secondary, at least out of the DBs, know that, hey, most likely the outside starters are already set with Tavarius Ward, Emmanuel Mosley. So if I do want to be a starter on this team, the slot is where I need to start. So we'll see who steps up into that role. I think the guys that you mentioned, obviously Dante Johnson is somebody who, whenever he's asked to play, plays a very good role. I think he plays, and I would love to see him as somebody who could, get some meaningful playing time for the team. But yeah, man, move on to the safety. So, I mean, obviously Tavarius Ward came back. I mean, Tavarius Moore. I'm just, everybody is Ward in the secondary to me now. But Tavarius Moore, he was somebody who was injured all last season. A lot of people thought he was going to start last season, Rohan. So, obviously the injury curtailed that. It's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, Hufanga, Jimmy Ward had some great things to say about him. Basically saying he has all the tools. All he needs now is the experience. But I think Tavarius Moore, if he's healthy, I think he can be another name that we might see there starting alongside, obviously, Jimmy Ward, who is definitely going to be the starter at the other safety position.
Right, and I thought Hufanga definitely would have started yesterday. I didn't think it would be George Odom, just because George Odom hasn't been in this system since last year. More, like you said, coming off the injury, and then obviously there's Ward, right? So I thought the two starters would definitely be Hufanga and Jimmy Ward yesterday. Now, will Hufanga keep that spot? That's something to be that's something that's somewhat of an unknown. One thing that I've heard that I've kind of come around on in the last couple of days, Hufanga, one thing I've said about him, despite my critiques of him, is that he is instinctual. He's one of the smarter minds, right? And after taking in this defense for an entire year, that might be to better use. And I understand the lack of deep end speed, right? But sometimes the smarts and the instinct kind of trump those. So it'll be interesting to see who gets the start. And really, it doesn't matter too much who gets the start, because obviously there are certain packages that you play certain guys. But who gets the majority of the snaps, especially down the line in the safety group? Can it be one of these guys, or does it even potentially move outwards to maybe a Dante Johnson, maybe even a Tariq Castro-Fields, or maybe one of those undrafted guys?
Yeah, I mean, I was somebody who really thought that, especially with Jaquazi Tart still not on a team, and the 49ers really not having necessarily a bona fide ready-to-go starter there, I thought Tart was going to be brought back. I thought it would make sense for Tart to sign another one-year deal and the 49ers to just, be able to run it back with, the duo of Tart and Ward, who, play really well together in this scheme. But it looks like they're ready to pass the torch. It looks like they're ready to get younger, either with a guy like Hufanga or Moore, or, even Odom, like you said. But it looks like, at least, even though I kind of mentioned maybe Tavarius Moore is there, I really think it's Hufanga's job to lose at this point. It seems like that's where they'd like for it to go. Whether or not Hufanga steps up and actually grabs that opportunity is to be seen. But I don't know if you feel the same way, Rohan. I really think it's his job to lose, and it's really up if he plays the way plays well. I think that you see him and Ward being the duo back there that gets the most playing time.
I thought it'd be Odom. Not starting day one, but I think the safety, just based on what they paid him and what the expectation is of him, I thought it'd be Odom from the beginning of the season, because he did flash at safety last year, started 7 games for the Colts due to injury. Obviously a prime special teamer, so there's a role for him on the team if he doesn't win the safety spot. So it'll be interesting, right? Because it is somewhat based on potential, but at the end of the day, it's whoever the best man for the job is in training camp itself who's most prepared. And Hufanga has the up on the playbook, right? He has the up on the scheme, up on the playbook. So that's where Odom has to win. But I wouldn't be surprised based on the raving reports that we've heard about Hufanga if he's a starter. I also wouldn't be surprised if it would be George Odom. I would, however, be surprised that if it was Tavarius Moore. At least
Fair.
I think he'd be surprised if it's Tavarius Moore week 1.
Fair. And, I think a lot of people might be looking at the offensive line as where the primetime battles are as far as that. But I might mention one that I think might be a little bit different from maybe what people see. I'm really interested in seeing the running back room, and I want to see who kind of shines there. I think for the most part, people think it's going to be Elijah Mitchell, but I've seen Anthony Lynn, use multiple backs before. Obviously, we've seen Shanahan use multiple backs before. Elijah Mitchell clearly, was worn down near the end of the season, even though he was injured for, a lot of the season as well. He just got way too many carries, I think, and had to carry way too much of the load. I really want to see who shines out of, Elijah Mitchell, Trey Sermon, and obviously the rookie Davis Price. To see out of those three, like, how is anybody going to stand out? Is anybody going to separate themselves from that group? And how well can it turn into a three-headed monster? Because they all seem kind of relatively similar as far as what they like to do with the ball. I do think that this rushing attack needs to get a lot better as far as production-wise from where it was last season for this team to elevate the offense the way that we needed to see. So that's where I'm really looking forward to seeing. Elijah Mitchell had a really great training camp last year. And, guys like Jack Hammer were telling me, look, I think Elijah Mitchell is actually going to, play a meaningful role for this team. And then, Mostert goes down week 1, and luckily Elijah Mitchell just went in there and, kept things going. So that's really what I'm most interested is to see what happens with that running back room, because it's the youngest that we've had in some time.
Oh, yeah. I think that's definitely fair. And it might not even be about the top guys, but it's like who will win those second, third, and fourth spots, right? You've got a rookie who Anthony Lynn was speaking pretty highly of today. And you've also got Sermon, who continuously is posting these workout videos, kind of showing that he's back into it. Maybe there's something else that kind of lights the spark. He seems slimmer, so we'll see how he plays. And then you've got Jeff Wilson Jr., the veteran, alongside JaMychal Hasty. So not everyone, but at least myself, I expect Hasty to be the odd man out. Training camp can change all of that. And I mean, one unnamed or unknown guy that could be a sleeper just based on reports is Jordan Mason, the undrafted free agent. There are only 4 spots. There are 6 guys that I believe can compete for those 4 spots. So let's see, because I mean, battles only bring out the best in everybody. So let's see how it goes.
Look, and it's not like Kyle Shanahan's afraid of playing an undrafted, rookie, right? We saw that with Breida, and he obviously had really meaningful ball with the 49ers in 2019. And I don't know too much about Mason. Is he more of a speed guy, Rohan, or is he built like these other backs?
He is he's somewhat big. I believe he's around 5'10-ish. I think he's around 5'10-ish, if I'm not mistaken. He is somewhat big. He's actually no, he might be a little taller than 5'10. I know he's 220. He's around 220. I think he might be 6 foot 220, but he does possess some speed. The place where he was pretty solid was as a pass catcher over there at Georgia Tech. And that's something the 49ers do covet. That's why I think his name pops up a little more, because he's a pretty good pass catcher, I think, and a pretty good route runner at the running back spot. And whether he's a practice squad guy that gets elevated on game days, or whether he actually makes the 53, I'm not sure.
And I'm just going to throw this out here. So it seems like right tackle, we know who's going to be there. Center, we know who's going to be there. Left guard, we know who's going to be there. Obviously, left tackle, we know who's going to be there. Who do you think plays right guard?
Now, obviously, if we think it's Alex Mack starting, the favorite is Daniel Brunskill, who did suffer knee tendonitis and is expected to return for training camp. However, the spot is open right now. Jalen Moore, it's your spot right now. So if he shows out in these OTA periods, and if he can really impress the 49ers staff, it'd be interesting to see if those two interchange first-team reps in training camp itself, especially with Brunskill coming off knee tendonitis, right? Because right now there's no other guy. It's Daniel Brunskill, it's Jalen Moore, and then of course the rookies are on second team. If a rookie pushes, that'd be very interesting. But I think the 49ers have been priming Jalen Moore for a guard spot all the time since they drafted him. I know he played a swing tackle role last year, but Shanahan alluded that he'd play guard. His mold kind of fits better at a guard. I think, at least me personally, I think his mold fits better at a guard, and I think his athleticism is going to be very helpful on the interior, where it can take over for some of the pass protection fallacies that he had last year. So I do like Jalen Moore here. We'll see how Daniel Brunskill recovers if he's there at the end of OTAs. But really, the more time Daniel Brunskill misses just means the more time that Jalen Moore has to prove himself to the 49ers staff.
I love it. I love it. So we'll end on this one. Obviously, we alluded to it earlier. Basically Shanahan and Shanahan's way made it official without necessarily making it official. But, Trey Lance was obviously up there speaking. Everybody kind of looking towards, the only person that actually discussed Jimmy Garoppolo at all was Jimmy Ward, which was ironic to me. But, yeah, I mean, from everything we're seeing, Trey Lance is going to be the starter. Just what were your takeaways? I mean, obviously you went through the numbers a little bit, Rohan, but now that we're just specifically focused on Trey Lance, what do you expect from this guy? What do you expect to see in this training camp? And, what have you seen so far?
I think what I'm expecting to see out of Trey Lance is probably, really, we've seen a good amount of traits, right? We've seen the reports about his work ethic. We've seen the traits. Now can you put it all together, put it on the football field? I want to see the consistency with accuracy. That's the main thing, because obviously that's the main knack on Trey Lance. How does he implement touch? How does he implement the new footwork that seems to just help him with getting the ball out quicker? Does all of this mean that he's going to be better with his accuracy? Does it mean that he's going to be better with his touch? Those are the main two things. Because, if he's got the touch in place, like it seems he's had all offseason, then, this kid is ready to take over the league. But obviously you have to put it over a consistent period of time. And it's crazy how much he works on his craft. I'm excited to see Lance really in the first realm of things where he isn't swimming anymore. He isn't in over his head. He's really relaxed, calm, and there's no competition for his job at that first team spot, at least until Garoppolo is healthy, which at some time we expect him to be moved off the team. There's really no competition for his job, so he doesn't have to worry about any of that. He can focus on the playbook, which he has known for a while, and really focus on the little things like the accuracy and things like that. For me, the one thing about Lance that I really liked, I'll come back to it. You go ahead, and then I'll come back to it.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I took away was, they really played down maybe his finger injury more than.
That's what it was. That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
When it came to the accuracy, when it came to maybe some of the mechanics things, it seemed like that finger really bothered him, because that was an injury that happened obviously in preseason. So he was dealing with it the whole year. And I would assume, like, I've never played quarterback, but I would assume that, like, not having that finger all the way to where it feels comfortable. Like, I played basketball before, and if your fingers are a little bit off with basketball, it does affect the way that the ball comes off of your, when you have a jam finger or whatever, comes off, and follow through gets messed up. Sometimes the ball isn't going exactly where you want it to, so you have to adjust mentally as far as how your fingers go and all that kind of stuff. I'm assuming that's the same type of stuff that Trey was dealing with, throwing the football. And I'm sorry, did something happen?
We won't talk about this tonight, but Javon Kinlaw just went on Instagram, and he said, "I shook your hand for my organization. Nowhere was anything squashed, and you know that. Stop capping, dog." But we'll talk about that we'll save that for another time if we can. Yeah.
So maybe it's not done. Anyways, so I'm thinking that not only was it rookie woes, learning a very complicated system, not necessarily having all the starts and all that kind of stuff, but then dealing with an injury, right? So this year we're going to be able to see him. He seems like he's fully healthy. He seems calm, poised, like you mentioned, a pro when it comes to the mic, seems extremely mature. Doesn't seem like a 21-year-old kid, right? Seems like, far beyond his years. The thing that stood out to me, Rohan, was all of the chiming in from other players about the type of leader that he was or he is, right? Calling all of the rookies, going out, getting their numbers, reaching out to them, getting
Yeah.
together, the off-season things with the wide receivers and bring everybody to, Southern California to start throwing those things. This is some stuff that we hear about some of the greats, right? And obviously, I'm not trying to put too much, but I mean, these are stories that I heard of Peyton Manning, Tom Brady. Like, you'd hear that kind of stuff about that. And I'm sure it happens with a lot of quarterbacks, but it's just nice to see at this young age to have the confidence to be able to do that. And then also having the players buy into it, right? I think that's a big sign for me that, things are looking good, at least, with this. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, I was going to talk about the finger injury as well. That was the thing that I had on my mind. And really, you're right. It seemed like they downplayed the severity of that injury, and I don't know if Lance probably is as forthcoming during the season on how much it was bothering him. He said it was close to 100% by the end of the year, but really it only got 100% in the offseason. And this is the finger that he injured back in the preseason. So it was over a course of several months that Lance was dealing with this injury, apparently. And now it kind of like a lot of people bash the 49ers for not moving to Lance last season in multiple instances, right? When Garoppolo was hurt, the 49ers stuck with Garoppolo back in week 18 after playing Lance in week 17 against the Texans. And I mean, I think now, I mean, looking back at it with the Lance injury news, I think it's better. You're just protecting your investment. I think they chose to protect Lance over Garoppolo in a way and wanted to protect their investment heading into week 18. And so I'm fine with I've been fine with how the situation played out. I think it played out pretty well. We got to an NFC championship game, but now it's great to hear that Lance is fully healthy, but it's interesting also to hear how that injury kind of affected him for the majority of the season. And obviously, he had the accuracy concerns in his first couple of games back in Seattle and Arizona, where the finger injury was just a couple of weeks away and really probably still in full effect then. And he himself talked about how he had to change the way he threw the football to account for that finger injury. And now he's back to normal. So it's good to hear that he's back to normal, which is important for these reps so that he can get the best out of them. And yeah, there is a lot of evidence, like you said in the headline, that Trey is the starter, and I think that that's pretty well known now.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm excited. To me, obviously, he seems like he's the total package, at least on paper. But unfortunately, games and championships aren't won on paper, right? He has to be able to put it together, and we get to see a whole training camp of him, really with no competition, like you said, to go out there, get all the first reps. It was great to hear how much him and Nate Sudfeld have a good relationship, because I think that's really important for a quarterback room, for all the quarterbacks to get be good together. So yeah, man, overall everything was good. I just was looking up Instagram after to see what Kinlaw was saying, and definitely he hasn't let it go. He had a tweet after that. I don't know if you saw that, where he says he's doing this for the real ones. He's not leaving anything, letting go of anything. So on that situation. So we'll see how Grant comes back on that one, and how he responds.
I think this one's run its course in a way. Even if Kinlaw retaliates, I don't think Grant should speak on the matter anymore. But
yeah, I agree. I think Grant could be the bigger person in this situation, and get back to just talking 49ers and hopefully not as much drama. We shall see. But Rohan, once again, man, you crushed it. Talk to us a little bit about what your week's looking like and where these fellas can find you.
Yeah, so you guys can find me on the screen. It says at Rohan Shakrov. That is my Twitter. Be sure to hit it up. Be sure to follow. Stay updated with the 49ers almost daily. Then you can look at 49ers Web Zone. I am one of their main writers, so be sure to check out my written content there. Broke down OTAs yesterday. Broke down all of the recent 49ers news. And so check that out. And then also check out my channel, my full name, Rohan Chakravarthi. You guys be sure to go subscribe over there. Sunil, thank you so much for having me on as always. Great Wednesday show, and I'm hoping we're back at it next week if possible.
Yeah, man,
I
we'll
think,
figure it out.
yeah, this week I think, to be honest, I don't really know what the schedule is at this moment, just because of the outside stuff that I have going on. But yeah, let's see, and I'm sure I'll be on the show with somebody or myself over the next couple of days. So stay tuned.
For sure. And guys, for me, Friday, actually yesterday, both my show with Jack and Jesse were canceled due to OTAs for Jack, and then the Warriors game was on last night. So people don't like watching 49ers stuff while the Warriors play. But
Exactly.
this Friday, Jack is gonna come right here on So Real Sports Talk, and we're gonna break down, OTAs and what other 49er news is out there as well. So please come join us. It's going to be Friday evening. We'll definitely put up links on Twitter. And obviously, if you're subscribed here, hit the notification bell so you don't miss anything there. Please go subscribe to Rohan over there if you haven't already. He obviously does some great work, as you guys know. And like I say, always have a safe night. Stay hydrated. And we will talk again very, very soon. Enjoy the rest of your night, guys.